Hello, today we're going to have a look at methods. After this session, you'll be able to recall the syntax for a method, explain what a method is used for, implement a method that will accept input values, do a calculation and return a value, test your code, make sure it works properly according to the requirements, explain your code then to your partner, that'll be the person working beside you, and evaluate or review your partner's code. And then you provide them and your teacher with a report on your partner's code. So you'll be able to do all that. So what is a method? A method is a set of code which you can refer to by name. Up until now, we have been writing very long sequential pieces of code in your main method. And the problem with that is, well, one, it's very long and it can become quite hard to understand. And the second thing is, when you want to do the same thing more than once, you have to copy and paste the same piece of code or the same lines of code multiple times. And that means to maintain the code, if you have to change one of those lines of code, you have to change it in multiple places. So it makes it more difficult to maintain and it makes the code longer, so it's more difficult to understand. A method is a solution to those problems using methods. So a method is a set of code which we can refer to by name. It can be called or invoked at any point in a program just by using the method's name. You can think of it as a sub-program that does something for you. Now, the basic syntax for a method. The method will always have a method name, and in most companies, from a style perspective, a method name will start with a capital letter. And each new word in the method name will also start with a capital letter. The method name cannot have a space within it. After the method, then we have open and closed parentheses. Within these parentheses, you have your arguments. These are the parameters or the values that we're going to pass into the method from the calling method. So the calling method will call our method, but it will often pass in values. For example, if you want to add two numbers, then you would call a method, and you would probably call it add, and then you would pass in 2 and 4. That would be two parameters that you would pass in. You can have no parameters in the parameter list, in your argument list, or you can have as many as you like. You can have multiple parameters in the parameter list. A method also has a return type, and that in the example I've given a few seconds ago, we might pass in two numbers. If they're integers, then you'll be passing out an integer. So the return type from the method would be integer. The return type passes the value or passes the result of the method back to the piece of code that called the method in the first place. We'll see an example of that in a few minutes. Now, here we have two methods, and you'll be very familiar with the first method here, our public static void main method. This method calls another method called area, so we'll have a look at that first. Now this will be new to you. Let's have a look at the syntax of the first line. The public and static you're familiar with, although you won't understand yet, unless you've done object-oriented programming, which we haven't covered. So I won't get into that today. We'll do that at a later date. But for now, you would need to put these words in, these terms in, these keywords, public and static. The method we have is called area in this example. It's going to take two parameters in our input list. Two integers, A and B. Then we get into the body of the method, and you can see these two curly braces represent the body of the method, or delineate the body of the method. So this is our begin and this is our end for the method. This method is fairly straightforward. It will just print out, okay, now we're now inside the method area, just for understandability when we're going through the actual code in Eclipse in a few minutes. It will return A and B, and this return is a keyword, and it means return the value to the calling method or the calling code of the result of A times B. So it'll multiply A and B and return the result. And we see the return type is integer. So this gets passed to the calling method. Now let's see how is this called. We have here the calling line, we call our method here area. We call that's the term we use, invoke or call. So we invoke the area method and we pass in two integers. Now we could have just put two numbers in here. They could have been two constants, but in our case we use these two variable names. We pass those into the area method. The calculation gets done and then the return gets passed or assigned to this result variable. And the next line in our main method you would be familiar with this. System.out.println, the area is, and then we just print the value. Now the integer.toString, I'm not sure, you may not be familiar with this, is this print line would struggle to print, it won't be able to print this string and an integer, two different types. So we must change this this integer result back to a string, or into a string, so it can be displayed. Now another point I have a couple of slides which we'll get to in a few seconds that will illustrate this, is that these two variables here get passed via this call to this area method. Now what I said there wasn't quite accurate. Copies of the values of these two variables, the values of these two variables get passed into this method. These are not references to the original locations of where these values are stored. So if A and B get changed inside here, it has no effect on the values here. Now that gives some protection then for these values. They cannot be changed by this method. Also note that the area method here is outside of the main method. There's the main method opening brace and the closing brace. And here's our area method, which is outside that. Okay, so methods are independent from each other in code. Now let's just have a look at the at this concept of passing by value. So we set up in our code two variables, A and B, for example, integer A and integer B. And these integers have their values stored in two locations in memory. And then we make a call to some method. We just call it call method here. This is our method, we call it call method, using A and B. And what happens is the values of A and B get pushed onto an area in memory called the stack, or the call stack. Then when the method is invoked, the method parameter list, the argument list, now refer to the call stack values, not the original values. So if A and B are changed within this calling method, yes, it changes the values of A and B here in the call stack, but does not change the values of A and B, the original values of A and B in the areas of memory that are referenced by integer A and integer B. Now, that is called passing by value. In Java, all values are passed to methods by value. Now we're going to have a look at the implementation of a method in Eclipse. I've just created a class here called myFirstMethod, and in that we have the usual main method structure. And then here I've just declared some variables. Our first integer, first int, which I've assigned a value of 3, second int, which I've assigned a value of 4, and the result, which I've assigned a value of 0. We won't do that just for now. Then I'm going to, now here's how we would do this, here's how you would have done this up until now. You would have declared result, which is our result variable, equals our first int times our second int. That's underlined. I probably spelled it wrong. Oh, there we go. Okay. And then we will on this line we'll print out the area is, and then concatenate the the result here, the string. Now I've got this integer.toString to convert the integer value to a string so that it can be displayed within the print line method. So I'll just step through this code. So to step through, I go to our debugger, I put a breakpoint on, and I will debug. Okay, so we've gone down to our line here, and if we have a look here, our first int gets a value of 3, our second int gets a value of 4, our result is set up here with a value of 0, it's initialized with a value of 0, and then we have our 3 times 4, so result will get the value of 12, and we can see the result here, and then that will get written to the console. So the area is 12. Now that's the way we would have done that coding up to now. Now we're going to change this, and we're going to use a method to do it. So go back to my Java code again, the coding area. So this is the end of our main method. So I take a couple of spaces or a couple of new lines, and now I'm going to create my area method. So public. These are keywords I mentioned before in the video that we always need to have words like this or similar to this in our code. We will go through these later on when we're doing our objects and classes. Now, this code will return an integer. Sorry, this method will return an integer, and we'll call the method area. Now, the area method is going to take 2 parameters as input, 2 integers, so we declare those, so int A and int B. We can call these anything we want, but I just call them A and B for now. Actually, let's make it a bit more meaningful. We'll call it integer height and integer integer width. Now I'll put another little line in here to say, a print line, to say that we are now in the method, just so you can see what's happening. I'll just copy out this code. Inside the area method. And now we'll just do the calculation, which is that. But instead of having result equals, we have return. I'm going to change the name of these variables. Return. Oh, I can see what I've done wrong. I've used a capital R. There we go. That's correct now. So we're returning the height times the width. Okay, now to evoke or invoke this method, all we need to do is name it and pass in the parameters. So we name it the area, so result equals area, and then we pass in first int, and second int. Now, this will work the same as before, but instead of doing the coding here for the area, now we have a separate method. The advantage of this, well, there's a number of advantages. Well, an area method is quite easy to code. This method could have had 30 or 40 lines in it. And then we could have called that area method as many times as we want, or we can call the area method as many times as we want from this main method. Let me give you an example. We'll call it again, and this time we'll pass in 2 other variables. This time we'll just put numbers in directly. So 5 and 6. Okay, and this will then again print out the area the second time. but with a result for 5 and 6 rather than the first two, which are 3 and 4. Okay, so let's have a go at that in our debugger. Okay, so I'll step through the code again. So we initialize or declare and initialize our variables. Now, when I click, I need to step into now for this code to go from this method down into the area method. So if you just check it out here, step into is F5, or I could click here, step into, but I'm going to use the F keys. I'm using the F keys to step through the code. So my F5 key. So that jumped from here down to our area method, and height gets a value of 3 and width gets a value of 4. We print out inside the area method, and now we're returning 3 times 4. So this will go back up here, and this result, which currently has no value, well, actually it has the value of 0, doesn't it? I set it at 0 earlier. Actually, yes, it's not showing the value because we're not actually in this method at the minute. We're down here. I come back here, and now we see result. It has 0 at the minute, but when I step through, check that again, it now has the value of 5. And we can see that value up here as well. Now we're going to call the result method again a second time. Now note, we didn't have to write the code a second time for result, we just call it. Okay, so we're inside the area method again. This time height and width have the values 5 and 6, from 5 and 6, and return the height and width. Okay, so that's how the code works. And I run it again outside the debugger, just so you can see it running quickly. And there we go. Okay, now it's over to you. I'd like you to write some code using the code from the area program just to get you started. You'll find that on the Edmodo site. I've uploaded that for you. Write a program which will accept two values from the console, gross pay and tax rate. Calculate the actual tax and net pay and display these to the screen. Now, here's a bit of a design document. This is called a structure chart, structure diagram. We have our main method, and the main method will display enter gross pay to the user. I want you to capture the gross pay as a double. The main method will also display the terms enter tax rate, capture that as a double as well. You need to pass those values then to the tax deduction method, the gross pay and tax rate. The tax deduction method will return the tax deducted value, which you will then print on screen. Pass out then the gross pay and tax rate to the net pay method, and return net pay to the main method. And then the main method will display the net pay to the screen. Now here's a formula you can use. Tax is gross pay times the tax rate divided by 100. And net pay is gross pay minus tax, or in your case what you probably need to do, or you may decide to do, is have your net pay equals gross pay minus the gross pay times the tax rate divided by 100. Okay, those are the formula that you have. So using the requirements and structure chart, write the Java code to solve the problem as per the requirement. Test your code, pair up with the person next to you and explain or walk through your code. Review each other's code and evaluate each other's code. Evaluate whether it's consistent with the program design. Email the findings of your code review to your partner and CC the teacher in your email. Copy your code to Notepad and submit to the Edmodo site. And answer theory questions then on the Edmodo site. And the theory questions is just a few questions relating to the use of methods. Okay, so at the start of this session we talked about the learning outcomes. These are what we should know at this stage. You should know the syntax for a method. You should be able to explain what a method is for. It's to chunk up big coding problems into smaller, manageable problems, to make code easier to maintain, to create code that's reusable. You've implemented more than one method at this stage that will accept input values, do a calculation, and return a value. You've tested and explained your code, and you've evaluated or reviewed your partner's code. Thank you very much for your time.